On behalf of UN Women, let me just say a big thank you to The Economist for inviting us to this forum. Allow me to start with two contextual observations. The first has to do with our collective attention span. In the past 2 years, our mental bandwidth has been crowded by a global pandemic, a war in Europe, refugees, broken supply chains, inflation, a financial roller coaster, record-breaking heat waves, and a fast-approaching food crisis. We were, and we are, so overwhelmed by our global crises that even the decay in our politics went unnoticed, and the rise of illiberal democracies went unchallenged. From the schools of Kabul to the corridors of the Supreme Court in Washington, women's rights are being rolled back, and the world seems much too busy to do anything about it. The second observation has to do with our capacity to connect the dots. With so many emergencies, one would expect our global leaders to marshal all people, ideas, and money towards the common cause, to leave no resource untapped, to call for all hands on deck. However, half of the hands are being ignored. There is a startling disconnect between how women are impacted by these multiple crises and their involvement in finding and implementing solutions. Over and over again, we miss the chance to make better decisions by having women both in mind and in the room. Everyone is worse off for it. Take the pandemic. The virus hit women especially hard because it hit them where they are most vulnerable: their incomes, their health, and their safety. Lockdowns and curfews destroyed the types of jobs where women were overrepresented: part-time, informal, service-oriented. The pandemic interrupted gynecological and reproductive care. And the pandemic unleashed a surge in domestic gender-based violence. Government responses to the pandemic were swift and massive and in the trillions of dollars, but they were mostly gender blind. UN Women's work with UNDP to look at the gender responsiveness of stimulus package shows that out of the more than 3,000 social and labor market measures that were taken, only 12% targeted the needs of women. The result has been a slower and more costly recovery for all. Our reconstruction and recovery efforts need to correct that if we truly want to build back better or build forward differently. Things are no different when it comes to conflict. In Ukraine, Ethiopia, the Sahel, Syria, and Yemen, women, girls, and other persons in vulnerable situations are being hurt, displaced, raped, kidnapped, and killed. They often experience conflict from a unique angle, and that makes their voices especially valuable. And yet, women are not being listened to, let alone empowered, in the search for an end to violence and in reconstruction efforts. The horrifying images from Ukraine drive the point home. How many women do we see sitting at refugee camps? And how many do we see sitting at negotiating tables? These impressions are confirmed by statistics. A rapid assessment of Ukrainian women-focused civil service organizations done by UN Women in early March found that beyond funding, the number one priority identified by civil society organizations and women's grassroots organizations was a desire to be included in decision-making, whether for humanitarian relief, peace talks, or reconstruction plans. The translation of this is very clear: hear us out. The absence of a gender lens is also clear and inexplicable in our struggle with climate change. Imagine two subsistence farmers, one male and one female. The latter typically has no land title, no bank account, no access to technical knowledge, and due to household work and a care burden, no spare time to look for them. A severe drought strikes. Who do we think is likely to suffer more? It is hardly surprising then that women are 14 times more likely to die during a natural disaster. What is surprising is that they are rarely part of the debates around mitigation where possible and adaptation where necessary. From the search for low carbon energy to the local practice of resilient agriculture, no solution will be sustainable or even doable if it does not take gender differences into account. So how do we make women equal partners in addressing the biggest challenges of our times? We need action on many different fronts. First, we need to recover lost ground in economic participation, health services, personal safety, legal rights, institutional representation, and we need to expand the set of rights that are available to women. We need rich countries to make their foreign aid more gender smart and to increase the size of their aid budgets and not cut back, which is the alarming trend in a number of major donors today. But we also need to mobilize private capital markets to serve gender equality. There is no reason, for example, why the success of green bonds and the ESG market cannot extend to gender bonds. UN Women is very proud to have worked with the International Capital Markets Association and the International Finance Corporation to have published the world's first guidelines on gender bonds. And we hope that this will lead to the creation of a new asset class. There is also work to be done in incentivizing the financial industry to create products and strategies that have a gender lens. This is why we were very happy to sign at Davos earlier this year an agreement with BlackRock to push on the issue of gender lens investment strategies, gender lens products, and advocacy in the asset management industry for more products and services geared towards women. Gender lens investing is probably one of the lowest hanging fruits there is, and it needs to be expanded. We also need to leverage the care economy now that we have seen how vital it is for society to continue functioning. We need to bridge the digital gap, a gap widened by COVID-19, before it becomes a new form of gender inequality. We need to change corporate behaviors. After all, there is now growing evidence that equal treatment of men and women is good for the bottom line, and gender equality actually leads to more sustainable and healthier companies. And we should look for and harness gender data, both big and small. If our social media algorithms can guess with amazing accuracy what kind of wine we want to drink and have it delivered to our doors, they should also be able to tell us who is desperate for contraceptives or who is at risk of being battered. This is undoubtedly a tall order. No single institution, government, or NGO can do this alone, no matter how powerful, rich, or connected it is. If there ever was a case for collective action, gender equality is the area where this is badly needed. Nor can inequality between men and women be rooted out in isolation as a technical problem. It runs through all our global issues. The key is to commit, to think across disciplines, and act together. We need multi-stakeholder partnerships to drive gender equality outcomes. The final prize is a better, fairer way to solve problems. Right now, we face a situation where my daughter's rights may be fewer than mine. But what we really want is a world where gender is no longer a factor in the distribution of leadership, voice, rights, knowledge, wealth, work, or opportunity. It is a world where my job and the institution that I serve may no longer be necessary. Thank you.